Welcome to the Ken Matthews Report. I have a great guest on today. I am thrilled to have Charles Marino on. And Mr. Marino is a nationally recognized security expert, and he has a great new book out called Terrorist on the Border and in Our Country. And if you're wondering what the book's about, it's about the terrorists that were on the border, and they're now in our country. And it's not pretty, but you have an extensive background in security. And before we start, I've got so many questions for you, sir. I'm so glad to have you on the show because
Thanks, Ken.
I really think that this does not get the coverage it needs. And obviously, Biden forgot we had a border, or he's napping. I don't know what's going on with Joe Biden.
Combination of the two.
Yeah, give my audience some of your background so they know how extensive the research is and your abilities in this book.
Yeah, sure. I'll tell you. I worked almost 2 decades in the U.S. Secret Service. Served as a senior law enforcement advisor to then Department of Homeland Security Secretary Janet Napolitano. I'm a graduate of the National War College in Washington, D.C. Have my master's in national security strategy, and that is where I began my deep dive into the problems associated with the Mexican cartels, where I was given really unfettered access in the region to explore and study exactly what type of problem the cartels were. Were they a law enforcement problem? Are they an insurgency problem? Are they a terrorism problem? And so that really formed the baseline of my interest several decades ago into Mexico and the transformation and expansion of the Mexican cartels. I then retired and started my own consulting company. We specialize in risk and intelligence. And that is what I do now, advising clients on all those issues, including geopolitical issues around
Excellent.
And then decided to become an author.
Yes,
and put all this together. Yeah, and put all this together, and describe to readers what this all really means to Americans in their daily lives as they see this crisis coming to where they live, and also what caused it, the policies and what it's done to the operations in the government. And then we put forth solutions. We don't just drop the problem on everybody's lap. We actually say, look, here's how the government is supposed to work, especially after the terrorist attacks of September 11th and the creation of the Department of Homeland Security and all these other agencies. So the book really does a deep dive into all aspects of it, including how previous administrations handled this issue.
I think that's one of the standout elements in the book, that you do an analysis of all the different administrations, regardless of their political alignment.
Right.
And Biden is on the losing end of all of them. In fact, the last 10 presidents probably did better than him in keeping us safe at the border. Yeah,
they did. I mean, border security and immigration enforcement are two major pillars in protecting the homeland. That's why both of these missions were placed within the Department of Homeland Security after 9/11, because elements of our immigration system, as we know, failed during those terrorist attacks. So there should have been a lot more scrutiny on visas that were being issued and follow up on that and interviews. And so look, to have policies that undercut this entire apparatus by the Biden administration has almost created a government at war with itself. You have a president that is undermining agencies, the men and women that took an oath to protect the country.
Right.
And it's really unprecedented, as you said.
So let me start with this one, and this is kind of off the beaten trail. It's more of a psychology thing, I think, or at the very least sociology. I struggle with this as a non-expert, why so many Americans are not tuned in or plugged in to the severity of this problem or that it even is a problem. Now we have the propaganda that steers people around, but I wonder all the time, are people just ignoring this because it hasn't touched them yet, or do they just not know? I mean, to me, this is the biggest problem facing our generation. And that's one of the reasons I gravitated toward Trump in 2015. The fact that you have an open border and an active invasion at different
Yeah.
levels. And no one really is like, oh my gosh, did you hear about the border? That's the last thing people are talking about at the bar, or, we had people
Mhm.
over this weekend. And I was thinking, because this is how, podcasters or talk radio people think, we were talking about everything but the border. And every time someone would bring something up, I'd say, we're being invaded, right?
Yeah.
So what's your
Well,
take on that?
well, you know, first of all, a lot of flawed assumptions by the rest of the country. I don't think that they thought the Biden administration was going to let this crisis go on for as long as it has, and because of that, there was this flawed assumption that the crisis was going to remain in the region of the southwest border, right? And that it was only going to impact states like Texas and Arizona, California, maybe Florida. Um, but that obviously wasn't the case.
Hmm.
And so we knew that there was ultimately going to be a natural migration, regardless of the politics that's going on right now, the Department of Homeland Security flying people around the country, Governor Abbott flying people to sanctuary cities. None of that matters. There was always going to be a natural migration of these illegals coming into the country to sanctuary states and cities. The natural progression is because sanctuary cities provide the protections to these illegal migrants, not just the ones going for a better life, but those that want to come in and commit more crimes. They're also protected as well because sanctuary states don't work with immigration and customs enforcement. So if somebody in the country illegally commits a crime, they will not cooperate with ICE and turn that individual over for deportation. So that explains why the natural migration takes place. Now, as far as the people that aren't talking about this and aren't getting it, they just haven't been impacted yet. And that
Okay.
means it hasn't come to a neighborhood near them.
It's coming.
Um, it is. And so that group that you talk about, Ken, is slowly becoming and finding themselves in the minority. Because if you look at the sanctuary cities and other major cities throughout the United States, this has become a unifying crisis, a unifying issue
Hmm.
for Democrats, independents, and Republicans. I can tell you, we started our book signing tour last week, and I had both Democrats and
Mm.
Republicans self identifying to me, unsolicited, saying enough is enough. This guy has really screwed this up, and it's impacting the country and sending us in the wrong direction, and it's making it a less safe place to live.
When and I happen to believe that Biden stole the election. Full disclosure, that's my thought. So when he took over, and on day one, he started to it almost seemed petty and vengeful to me. The way he said, all right, we're going to stop building this wall. We're going to sell the material at a loss that Trump still had surplus. There was money, as you know, in the fund to continue building the wall. We're going to change this. We're going to stop this. We're going to get rid of this and that. And I thought, is this just because you want to eliminate any fingerprints of Trump, or is this helping? I think when more of that gets out, I think people are really going to be ticked off, because we shouldn't, he moved us backwards on the border. He didn't even keep a status quo. He took what Trump did and destroyed it, did he not?
Well, let's. One thing I want the listeners to understand is that the president of the United States sets the national security strategy for the country. So, in that nature, the process is political because of who it stops at, the president. Now, the assumption by Americans is that if you have a political issue or a national security issue that touches on politics, such as immigration,
Mhm.
that the safety and security of the American public is always going to be prioritized by the person sitting in the Oval Office. And I think what they're finding out now is that's not true. And in other cases, it hasn't been true. This is the most gross example of it not being true. So that it by itself is a huge problem. Um, yeah, this is all by design, Ken. He was briefed, the administration was briefed during the transition by the leadership of both Customs and Border Protection and ICE, which simply said, in a nutshell, what we have in place right now from the former Trump administration is working. We have the lowest levels of immigration, illegal immigration attempts to the country in decades. So this is what's in place. This is how it's working. This is where Remain in Mexico comes into play. This is where Title 42 comes into play. This is our rate of deportation, and on it goes. And the administration thumb their nose at the men and women who do this each and every day. So right then and there proves to us that this is not an apolitical issue. The Biden administration politicized it. They had made promises during the campaign to the immigration advocacy groups,
Mhm.
many people of which originated from there and are now in the federal government within the Department of Homeland Security, Health and Human Services, implementing the very policies that have caused this crisis, by the way, at the direction of the administration. So the story was known. We knew this 3.5 years ago, based
Of
on what
course.
he was promising during the campaign, that if everything he was going to set in motion and stand down because of politics, because former President Trump came up with them and implemented them, that we were going to get to the point that we're at right now.
Working. Uh, can you hear me?
I got you.
Now I can't hear you. Hold on. Can you hear me now?
Mm-hmm.
Good. I apologize for that. Now, my audience, they probably figured, oh, he spilled a coffee again, but something got messed with. But you were heard the whole
Okay.
time. I noticed a little light flash. I apologize. I want to go back to the last thing you said when you were talking about the administration. And I think one of the most disgraceful individuals in the administration is Mayorkas. The level of incompetence, the lack of ethics, the fact that he was impeached, the Senate blew it off, and Mayorkas is he not the highest ranking security dude in our administration? So he's back. He's
Well,
running this whole circus, is he not? How does
he
that
is. He
happen?
is.
How
Yeah.
does that
So,
happen?
well, yeah, and you're seeing it get a little contentious during some of these congressional hearings
Oh
where
yeah.
you've got Mayorkas sitting next to the FBI director, sitting next to the director of national intelligence. Because look, what Mayorkas is facilitating and allowing to take place, he knows this is no way to protect the homeland. I know Ollie Mayorkas. This, honestly, on a personal level, this has been one of my biggest disappointments to see. I think he's done Americans a huge disservice.
Yes.
I think he's done his reputation a huge disservice. And I think he put proximity to power above what he's supposed to be doing. He knows better. He knows better. If I could assure you, if there was an off the record he would be in the position of having to agree with you. This is why I come on your shows and others by myself, because there's no credible Democrat national security expert that I know, that I'm friends with, that's going to come on and say, Chuck, the book you just wrote is wrong. The
Yep.
facts, the numbers
Well,
are
the
wrong.
politics, they're so
And
captured by the politics. I mean,
oh,
you
it
look at
is.
Christopher Wray's testimony, you look
But
at this.
but
These are
he's
the pieces that are supposed to protect the
but
nation.
Ken, he, if you notice, he's starting, these other intelligence and law enforcement officials are starting to go their own way. And they're starting to say things like, look, the threat level in the country is 10 times higher than it was pre 9/11. We're facing more threats from more places at any time in our history. They understand that they have got to tell the truth to the American people when it comes to the threats. Now, here's the other thing. Here's the other thing. If I'm the FBI director or another law enforcement official outside of DHS, and I'm sitting next to Mayorkas, I'm not too happy with him right now. And why is that? Because it's making the job of the men and women of the FBI and ICE and CBP harder,
Yeah.
because his policies are undercutting the common sense of how you protect this country. They're undercutting the statutory missions and authorities of each of these agencies. Let's look at Afghanistan when they brought in the 5,000 refugees and they swore up and down that they were all
Mm.
vetted. And we knew that that was impossible. And they bring 5,000 into the United States. What do you think the FBI was doing the following week? They were looking for half of them in the interior of the United States because they were flagged. They
And
found out
yet,
that there was an issue.
but somebody figured this out in Washington, and that's how he got impeached. He just couldn't get convicted.
Oh,
And the
that's right.
fact that the Senate, that just speaks volumes of both the Republicans and the Democrats
Uh,
in the Senate. The fact that they knew this was a problem with Mayorkas. They see the broken infrastructure regarding keeping our borders safe, and what you just said, that sad example of the Afghanistan. Not don't even get me talking about Milley,
mhm.
because he's like Milley's the Mayorkas and the James Comey of the military,
I
and
agree.
it really worries me. I mean, I try to be an optimist, but of all the different issues, this is the one that worries me the most, because it appears that the people that should care about it don't, and the people that should police them don't. And I think Mayorkas is the greatest example of that. Have you had a chance to speak to him since he was impeached?
I have not.
I was just
Um,
wondering what his
I
take. I mean,
I have not.
the Democrats are always whining like we railroaded him or we're just picking on Mayorkas. Do
Yeah.
how many people have to
It,
go down to the border and do great reports, and there's been plenty outside of
yeah.
mainstream media, and all those
Yeah.
reports get censored, or they get deplatformed, they get kicked off. I mean, how are we going to
You
get this information
you
out?
Ken, he's the both the secretary and the president are causing a lot of people that go to work each and every day to protect this country. They're causing a lot of them to lose sleep. And the reason why they're doing that is because they've entered into the equation off of 15, 20 million coming into the country illegally that can't be thoroughly vetted, and those that come in completely undetected. They've introduced too many unknown unknowns into the equation, and these officials know that. They know that. So when they get asked, hey, what keeps you up at night? They're being dead serious when they say, look, we basically have no idea who's been allowed to enter the country. We know that the global threat environment is increasing. We know that that has a direct impact on our threat level here at home, which is why we should be buttoned up starting at our borders. But we're not, and that's the truth. And I teach a course up at the University of South Carolina, and it's called "The Politics of National Security." And what I get across to the students is this, is back to my original point. You may think something is right in terms of how to go about protecting the country, but just understand that in the real world, especially under the current administration, that reality, that realistic approach to solving the problem may be bypassed. And we see examples of this because of politics each and every day. You've got Chuck Schumer still trying to throw Biden a border security lifeline with
Right.
a bill that allows 4,000 to 6,000 illegals to enter the country a day.
I saw that. I saw that.
We
Yep.
actually have a bill that allows illegal immigrants to come into the country, 4,000 to 6,000, continue to exploit the legal pathways. When we've heard previous secretaries like Jay Johnson say, hey, look, when that number used to approach 1,000, that was a crisis level for me. and we're talking about 4,000 to 6,000 in a bill. I mean, give me a break. But you know why they're doing it? They're not doing it because it's going to solve a problem. They're not doing it because it's going to make the country safer. They're doing it so that when Republicans in the Senate say this is nonsense, we're not going to pass this, they're going to villainize the Republicans and say they don't want a secure border.
And it's
that'll be the
interesting.
spin.
It's great to hear this from an expert and other people that have studied this, because anybody who looks at history knows that the road we're on with both legal immigration and illegal foreign nationals that live in our country, over 25 million probably. Anybody knows that this road, I don't know how we turn back from it, because the only difference from a regular invasion, in other words, you know this, we've got 5 million illegal nationals since the start of the Biden administration. And all I think of is any invasion in history or any movie I've seen where people are invading a country. And in any other country, now I know the UK's they are allowing this. I know Netherlands is going through it. Spain. I mean, it's just
Australia.
Oh, and Canada. Don't forget Canada. They're like a doormat. But if you look at some of our biggest enemies on the global stage, communist China wouldn't put up with this. Communist China. If 10 people snuck into communist China, they'd be on the front page of the newspaper in a bad way.
Well, let's talk about China real quick. Chinese nationals being encountered and let into the country are
hundreds,
1,800% since the Trump administration. I'll say that number again, up 1,800%. So let me tell you this first thing. Large quantities of Chinese nationals don't just up and leave China without the permission of the PRC.
And unless they have a mission.
This is a fact. That's right. This is a fact. The majority of what we're seeing from China are 18 to 45 single males that are coming into the country. Okay. China is also working closely with the Mexican cartels to kill hundreds of thousands of Americans via fentanyl. Okay.
Well, they're the doctors. They're the trainers. They taught Mexico how to
do it. That's
good
right.
fentanyl.
The synthetics. That's right. So that's an example of our number one adversary in the world, a state actor. We know the role of the cartels. They've morphed into terrorist organizations now. They've never been so powerful as they are now because of the policies of the Biden administration, which is helping them by facilitating the human trafficking, the drug trafficking, et cetera. On and on we go. Now let's talk about the non-state actors. The non-state actors are ISIS, ISIS-K, Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, that the Mexican cartels are also working with.
Right.
Again, you pay the cartels and you're the highest bidder, they will facilitate your illegal entry into the United States. They do not care. The government of Mexico is nowhere to be found because the government of Mexico has been minimized. The cartels aren't a true insurgency. They don't want to run. They don't want to govern Mexico. But what they do want is for the Mexican government to stay the hell out of their
Oh yeah,
business.
they want free passage, and
That's right.
that's why they control, as you know. And sometimes people find this hard to believe. The cartels really control the military and the lion's share of border law enforcement, like the federales, unfortunately,
So
in
so
Mexico.
let's talk about why that is. So the federal, state, and local law enforcement institutions become corrupted. President Calderon comes in and he says, look, I can't trust the police forces anymore. There's not
Mhm.
enough of the federales to go around and do this. I want the military, against the objection of the military, by the way, because they still viewed themselves as a trusted institution. Calderon says, you guys are now in the cartel business. You're now in the law enforcement business.
Mm.
The Mexican military starts to go to the hotspots. They send, for example, 1,000 soldiers to a hotspot with all their equipment, all their vehicles, all their weaponry, and only 500 come back. Not because 500 are being killed. 500 are being offered more money by the
Yep.
Zetas, La Familia, the Sinaloa,
Sinaloa.
and
Yep.
they're taking with it all of their equipment, all of their training, all of their weaponry, all of their vehicles, and they're not coming back. Now, this is why we have the paramilitary aspect of the cartels now.
Right.
That's why we have the military knowledge that the cartels have now. So the cartels have been allowed to morph because Mexico found itself up against the wall with nobody else to go after the cartels but the military. And
Right.
now you add these flawed policies from the Biden administration, and it's the perfect storm of idiocy. It really, it's, you got Mexico is incapable. You've got the Biden administration undercutting everybody in the country that's goes out each and every day trying to protect the country. Then those are exploiting state and local policies that are ridiculous, like what we
Right.
see in New York City, where prosecutors are unilaterally selecting what crimes they're going to prosecute, and on we go. So look, the point is this: there's one common theme there. Democrats.
Yeah.
It's
And you know,
Democrats.
but
The story tells
what
itself.
about Donald Trump's documents?
Yeah, no, I know. So we gotta. The good news is we can turn this around where we are right now. 4 years from now, 8 years from now, and if this stays the same, we're in trouble. We're done. Never mind our sovereignty being lost, our national identity. From a security standpoint, we'll never get it back. We'll never be able to put this genie back in a bottle.
I know you have solutions in the book, and this is what, for example, I say to people, 19, the story, the narrative, 19 terrorists on 9/11. Now
That's it.
tell us how many getaways there have been, how many non-apprehended illegal foreign nationals during the Biden administration. And keep in mind, if you're listening,
Oh,
people,
yeah.
19 terrorists on 9/11. How many are loose now? Not
Well, we're over 2 million gotaways. That's where CBP never makes what they consider initial contact. They
right.
flee. Now, there's another bucket too of those that are making it into the country, which go completely undetected.
Watch list.
We'll never know those numbers. Watch list, we're over 300. We know that those on the watch list have been let into the country to roam around for some as long as a year before they're finally caught and removed. We know that criminal aliens are being let in, whether it's because they can't be thoroughly vetted or the administration is saying just let them in. And these are the criminal aliens that we're hearing stories about each and every day now, who are doing what? Surprise, committing more crimes.
Oh yeah.
This time against Americans. So we are infiltrated, whether we're talking about Chinese nationals, whether we're talking about non-state actors, terrorist organizations, the Mexican gangs, the Venezuelan gangs, MS-13, all the others. They're here. They're operating now. They're setting up their systems here within the United States, and they all report to the cartels. They don't do anything with the cartels. And by the way, the illegal migrants that are being trafficked by the cartels, many of them continue to work for the cartels, not by choice, but
Mhm.
because they have to, because many don't have the monetary fee to pay when they're being trafficked. And if that fee is not returned, the Mexican cartels will kill all of the family members left behind in the country of origin. So this is just, the Biden administration is now part of the largest human trafficking, drug trafficking operation in US history.
Yes, they are.
I hope they're proud.
He's the number one enabler.
Yes.
And just like when Obama said it, and when people that were surrogates for Obama on that campaign trail, and even during the 2016 race, I remember um, Hillary had illegals campaigning for her.
Mhm.
She had hundreds of illegal foreign nationals going into
Yeah.
the barrio and going into these villages and stuff near the border in border states. Vote
Mhm.
for Hillary, vote for Hillary. And the sad thing is they're using what is it called? What do you use when you use the humans to defend you when the military does
Oh,
that?
human shields.
Human shields. The
Yeah.
Biden administration is using, because the media helps them,
Right.
because half the or a third of the country thinks that most people coming in, they look like your grandma and a hardworking Latino woman with a son
Mhm.
that looks like Jesus. And they're all coming in, and they have sacrificed, the Biden regime, in my opinion, has sacrificed the women and the children and the real desperate people that are victimized in that zone coming into our country to allow whatever else they want to do. They want to change the complexion of the voters. I don't mean complexion of the actual voter. I mean, they want to redistrict this country by population,
Yeah.
illegal population.
Ken, look at what Biden said the other day at the commencement speech, the graduation speech. I believe it was at Morehouse.
The one where the
And
black guy stood up and
and
turned their back on him.
and by again, but look, Biden, he's not with it. He's not. I don't know what time and space he's living in mentally, but it's not current. And for him to say, with the people that he used to hang out with in the Senate, by the way, confirmed members of the KKK, and support them as the next best thing to God. For him to stand up and look at an African American audience and
Yes.
say there is no place for you in this country under Republicans tells you everything you need to know.
Well, he is
It
the
tells everybody what they
it's
need to know.
just he just recycled the 20, was it the 2020 or the 2016, when he said the Republicans will put you back in chains?
Yes, I
Or
remember that.
or in 2020 when he was on in New York and he said to that radio host, if you don't vote for me, you ain't black. And we continue to allow a real racist who
That's right.
who
That's right.
punishes not only Latinas, I mean, the
Mhm.
women and children and the young boys are bearing the brunt of this invasion because the cartels use them as human shields. The
Yeah.
cartels slave them out. You know, you're going to do this, or like you said, we're going to kill your family or your mother or your poppy,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
And nothing is being done. And again, I hate to bring up Mayorkas again, but I still can't believe, with all this data and information, and this has been around
Mhm.
for a long time. I mean, you've been studying this for years and years, but this whole cartel dynamic, we've been warning people about the cartel and how they have outposts in Portland, Oregon, and
Mhm.
Portland, Maine,
Yeah.
and Long Island, New York. We've
They
been warning
go,
people.
yeah, they go where they're allowed to operate,
Yes.
which again are the sanctuary
Sanctuary
states
city.
and
Yep.
sanctuary cities. So look, sanctuary cities, if I go into office tomorrow, if I'm former President Trump,
Right.
and he gets elected, the first thing I do is no more federal money in the form of these public safety grants go to
Nothing.
sanctuary cities.
Yes.
That's it. You're cut off. All of you are cut off. If you don't want to be and join with the rest of society and support law and order, you're going to lose. And this is a lot of money. We're talking billions of dollars. It's gone. That's it. You're not getting it anymore. And then you work to officially outlaw sanctuary cities, which will be a tough fight. But if Republicans can get the majority, a significant majority in the House and the Senate eventually, then it becomes more of a reality, right? The other thing is going after the cartels, bringing the military into the mix, the
I
whole
was just
government
going to say,
approach.
this
It,
is a mill.
yeah,
As much as I hate to do this because
it is
I love
now.
the Constitution. I
It
love the
is now.
Constitution. I was just
Yeah,
going to say it has more, the cartels and people coming over the border are this is an
yes,
invading force.
yes. It
This
is.
is an
So it is now.
invading force.
It's a problem now that the military needs to play a substantial role in
Yes.
because of the Biden administration. Let's make that clear.
Oh, very much so.
Transnational criminal organization title was always very neat. It was a manageable law enforcement
Right,
problem.
right.
The cartels have now exceeded that. You could keep the law enforcement stuff running in the background, following the money, going after the money, making the arrests, whatever. But it's time. Look, Mexico, we can do it with you or we can do it without you. Obviously, we want to do it with you, but we got to go after the cartels,
Right.
and we got to start degrading what they're doing too. And then we got to start the deportation efforts,
Oh,
right?
yeah, I was going to
And,
say we have
and
to shut
we
the
have to.
border.
You got to enforce the laws on the
We have to
books.
put a pause on there.
Biden could do, yes, put a pause. Biden could do this tomorrow if he wanted to. Start enforcing the laws. Let
Yep.
everybody do their jobs from CBP, ICE, while we start the deportation. National security concerns, criminal aliens in the country committing crimes. Bring back the program Secure Communities that we used actually under
Mhm.
President Obama, the deporter in chief, where
Yep.
we federalized all 800,000 state and local law enforcement officers. You pull somebody over for speeding, they're in the country illegally, you're deported. We'll see
Now,
you later. You're gone.
explain that, because I think there's people here, Charles, listening. They don't know how much protection the invasion of illegal foreign nationals have. They don't know that in a sanctuary city, that if a police officer accidentally says, by the way, do you have ID? Are you in this country illegally? He
Yeah.
can be sued.
Yeah.
He can be
Well,
sued.
well, not only can he be sued, he'll likely be fired by the
Yeah,
municipality that he's working for, because sanctuary cities actually have written policies that say you may not do this. And if you look at Biden's policies, Biden has this cute little statement he always says, don't tell me what you value, show me your budget and I'll tell you what
oh
you value.
God, yeah,
Okay, well, guess what? Look at the budgets of CBP, look at the budgets of
yeah,
DHS, what he's done. There's actually carve out language in their budgets for CBP that says you must use this money for processing and you can't use it for enforcement.
right.
Now let's think about that.
Processing is
This is
making sure that the invasion force has the right paperwork.
That's exactly right. So you have a law enforcement agency, the primary agency responsible for protecting the border, and they are told they can't spend money on enforcement.
Now, there's
These,
an
these are the facts, folks.
oh, they are, and like I said, this audience, my audience, is awesome, and they are so in tune with what's happening, and this is why this is so exciting to have you on, because
Oh, thanks.
this is the type of interview that people can take. They can take pieces of it, they can make it go viral, and they could say, look, they can say to their brother-in-law or their sister-in-law or their neighbor, this is a real issue. This
Yeah,
is not Donald Trump's a xenophobe and you're just a white heterosexual male that doesn't want more people in your country. This is, and by definition, this is an invasion. Just like by definition, as of today, we are no longer a representative republic because of the breakage that we've had in that system for the last few years. I think Biden is closer to
yeah.
a dictator than any. He's right up there with Wilson. He's right up there with
I,
maybe FDR. I'm not sure.
your listeners are going to get it. I can tell you that I've analyzed this from 3 years ago. I've written about it. I've spoken about it on the news. I was one of the first ones out there saying this is going to be a problem. It's going to
Hmm.
exploit everything else that's going on in the country. We're going down a very bad road here. So, in this case, history is documented. It was easy to be called and predicted, and it should have been even easier to stop if the
Yes.
Biden administration had just listened to those of us who want to protect the country and prevent another 9/11 from happening. We should not have to learn a lesson that way. And we should not have our own government whose primary mission it is to protect this country and the Americans that live in it from another catastrophe like that. We should not have to live through that again.
And we have versions of this chaos because there's so many illegals in our country, illegal foreign nationals, which I notice people don't like calling them that. They like calling them migrants and residents and visitors. If you're in our country illegally, then you're in our country illegally. If you've overstayed your visa, if you had permission to come to our country for 2 months and you said, screw it, they're not serious. 9 years later, you're still living in a sanctuary city. That is not good.
Well, that's why, Ken, a big part of the equation when we're talking about the deportations, and we got to do it in sequence. Let's be realistic about it. But that third big bucket of deportations is going to be visa overstays and those that don't show up in accordance with the notices to appear. Which, as you know, they're being given basically a summons right now that says we'll see you in 5 years.
Well, they get a summons, they get a gift card to Target, a phone, a bus voucher.
$2 billion to the top 3 non-governmental organizations. $2 billion.
Wow.
And the majority of that has been gone through waste, fraud, and abuse. Of course, the executives of these nonprofits increase their salaries significantly, anywhere between 500,000 to $1 million a year. They're spending the money on programs, teaching kids how to talk to plants. You would not believe, and yet we hear nothing from the inspector generals from DHS and Health and Human Services. Look, Health and Human Services, we have 4,000 kids that have come into the country, either alone or as part of a family unit. And what does this administration do early on? They canceled the contract to do DNA testing to confirm that anyone that's claiming one of these kids is in fact part of their family.
That is despicable.
Yeah.
And it's like
85,000 kids missing in the country. No idea where they are.
Yes.
No idea. And look, what's more humane, having law and order under what former President Trump was doing and saying, look, we're a country of laws, these are the processes? Or is it more inhumane to just throw your hands in the air and say, you know what, just let's let it be a free for all. Everybody come on in, don't worry about it.
Right.
The Biden administration has proven that it's more inhumane when you remove all structure.
Yes. Well, it's like anything else, the structure and the discipline. Do you have time for a couple more questions?
Sure.
Good. I want to talk about infrastructure because we always, just like with the children, the Democrats are always it's about the children. We care about the children. The Republicans are evil. I remember when they did that horrible marketing thing on Trump where he's separating families when in reality he was saying, wait a second. You don't have any way to prove that you're this 9-year-old boy and girl's father. So we're going to separate you until we figure out what's going on here. That's what he was doing. So you know that, but a lot of people are new to that. Secondly, the infrastructure damage. We're forgetting about transportation. We're forgetting about the public schools, how they're being overextended. They have to have translators. We're forgetting about police departments that were set up for a city. Well, look at New York. They have 200,000 illegal foreign nationals in there, roughly, maybe.
Yeah.
That police department wasn't set up for that. And there, of course, let's factor in the Biden regime bringing the morale down, where we've
Mhm,
had in major blue sanctuary cities from Minneapolis to Los Angeles
mhm.
the highest retirement, the less
Yeah,
enrollment,
yeah,
recruitment problems for both the military and the law enforcement. But I
yep,
think it really hits home with moms and dads. Like here in Pennsylvania, there's illegals in Allentown that are in the schools, and it's heartbreaking because it's not this little boy or girl's fault, but now the teacher has to teach them. They have to be insured. They have to be transported. They have to be housed.
mhm,
So we're being invaded. And then our system, because we are a good people with a great country and constitution, we are babysitting the children
mhm,
of the invaders. Like in New York, you have mom goes out, who knows what she's doing. Dad goes out, he's doing criminal activity, and he knows I'll just leave these little kids in the hotel room. The maid
mhm,
discovers them, and then
mhm,
child services comes in and babysits while you
mhm.
continue to take over our country.
Yeah, no, there's I mean there's too many examples to count. Let's look at hospitals. We know that emergency rooms are now
Yes.
becoming primary care locations for
Mm-hmm.
colds, fevers. So they're overrun. Talk to any hospital where you live, and you'll hear the same story. So you've got low morale there as well too. We
Yep.
know we're down. We know we're down doctors, nurses,
Mm-hmm.
right? Same thing as you said with first responders. Remember, I spoke about poor policies rolling into other poor policies. So now we're seeing this crisis,
It's a train
right?
wreck.
You've got law enforcement who's been villainized since 2020. They've been defunded.
Yep.
So the numbers are down. Now they're being overwhelmed on this crisis. It goes on all the way to fire, ambulances, the schools, you name it, and none of the money is baked in. But look, Biden has dropped this on everybody's lap, Democrats and Republicans alike. He's not
Intentionally. Intentionally.
intentionally, he's not, well, we know why, and I'll go into
Yeah.
that too, but he's not returning the calls or meeting with the mayor of New York or the governor of New
Yep.
York. They're not getting, and if they are getting return phone calls, it's from like a low staff member
Now I
that's
want to
saying,
ask
hey,
you,
sorry, we're looking into it.
this is kind of a personal off the record thing, but it's on the
Yeah,
record and don't
yeah,
feel like, but
yeah.
how hard did you laugh when Kamala Harris was announced as the border czar?
Well, yeah,
I know
so I had,
I'm crying now, but I laughed at first.
so yeah, well, right. You could, I could almost visualize the follow-on meeting with her staff when she found out that she got tasked with this grenade
Yeah.
that the president caused. She basically she probably said, "There's no way I'm touching this. I'm not going near it."
Well, she
And her
didn't.
and no, and she didn't. And you know what that was? Those were her, even though she does have a job to do, those were her political survival skills
Yeah.
kicking in the high gear to say, wait a minute, this will destroy me, which it basically it has, because
Right.
it has drawn out and highlighted the gross level of incompetence in that White House. But if you look, nobody was in a rush to help solve this. If you look at the key points of Democrats and this administration's ransom note related to immigration, not only is it you got to let them into the country, it's you got to immediately get them work permits, you got to get them driver's
So they get
licenses.
registered to vote.
Now, now we're going to issue them an official federal ID that identifies you as an illegal immigrant. And there you go. You beat me to the chase. All so they can vote. And you hear local Democrats that are basically coming out right now, not even denying it.
Yeah.
They're talking about their anticipation to redistrict. They're
Yeah.
ta-
And
I
what they
mean,
do is they
it's
slowly
unbelievable.
the Democrats are masters at changing the language around it. Pretty soon,
Right.
it's like it starts out illegal foreign national, then it's illegal migrant, then it's migrant, then it's now, and I'm no longer an
Newcomers.
American
Remember
citizen.
newcomers?
Oh yeah. Oh, but how about this? Resident.
Mhm. Yeah.
Like Joe Biden said when he spoke to that one group, you are residents in this country,
Oh.
and I couldn't believe he said you
Mhm.
deserve the same protection of the Constitution.
No.
Okay, well, you now
And
we're
we're all paying
invaded.
for it.
We're invaded
And
by
we're all
there's
paying
20
for it.
20 plus million people, and
Yeah.
the leader of the free world said you're no different than an American citizen.
Right.
Now we're in trouble.
Right.
Now we're in trouble. And
Yeah.
you look at all these people pouring in and the
Hmm.
insanity of uh you couldn't go to the mall without a mask, or we have to be very careful. Now we've got tuberculosis on the rise, right? We've
Oh
got,
yeah.
I mean, we've had so many things.
Hmm.
I just read a report last year. All these diseases and viruses that we had under control, ironically with vaccines that worked,
Right.
and now we've got whooping cough. Do you remember the
Hmm.
story? This had to be 2 years ago. I did it on one of my radio shows with the Border Patrol agents that were getting whooping cough.
Yeah. Whooping cough,
Yeah.
measles. I mean,
Yes. At the border
everything.
because
Yeah.
they had to, change diapers and put
Mhm.
blankets on little boys and girls.
Yes.
I think they have it the toughest. I think some of our Border Patrol men and women
Well, we're
have it the
losing
toughest.
good people though,
Yes.
Ken. That's the problem is we're just like the law again, the policies, if you look at the party that is responsible for all of this, you see the consistency in what we're dealing with. And what it's and the costs, look, it's the physical safety for Americans, it's the financial costs, and within the subject matter expertise areas
Hmm.
like CBP and ICE, and we're losing good people. We're losing, unlike Mayorkas, people that put their hands on the
Yes.
Bible, took an oath,
Yes.
and actually want to uphold that oath. Whereas Mayorkas has totally
Oh,
corrupted what he's supposed to be doing here,
and
and
Merrick
the oath that
Garland,
he took.
Merrick
And Merrick
Garland,
Garland,
Chris Wray, all of them. And it's heartbreaking because you've got good agents in the FBI, brick agents.
of
You've got
course.
this, all these law enforcement agencies are filled with real patriots, men and women.
Yeah.
They love the country, their family, God, and then they're led by cowards, or dare I say, traitors in some cases, which is, what do you think, to wrap up, what do you think is the end game? Because we all have our theories about this, and I don't think the theories sound extreme anymore. I think this is so over the top that I am starting to look at, and I have for years now, members of my own government as an enemy. What's the end game of all this policy?
Well, I'll tell you, the end game is one, accountability across the board, right? And which establishes deterrence. So if we're talking about the problem that we're dealing with here in this crisis, there's got to be accountability.
Oh, so
We've
you're
got to
talking,
get
all right,
back.
I see. You're
We've
talking
got to get
solutions.
we got well, no,
Okay.
no. Let me. I'm going to go into this. So that's dealing with the problem. The other thing is where the accountability and the deterrence not to do the wrong thing comes into play. Is
Mhm.
that from now on, and it's a shame that I have to say this. From now on, though, we need to build some mechanism of accountability in. So if we get a cabinet secretary like Mayorkas that comes in and does what he's done and allows what he's allowed, there has to be a level of accountability that goes beyond impeachment. I need to know that if I take a job as a cabinet secretary and I don't do my job and I endanger Americans and I'm indirectly responsible for getting Americans killed, that there's accountability there, whether it's allowing me to be sued, whether it's
Right.
allowing me to be charged for not telling the truth about it under Title 18, 1001.
Yep.
Congress needs to start putting in some accountability to deter people from feeling like they can come there and lie. And then finally, look, this all comes down to the voters. New York, do you like what you got right now? Seattle, Portland, all these other places. Do you like what's happening to your communities right now? Because you voted for it.
Yes.
Same thing at the national level. This is what you voted for. You got a guy in office right now who has destroyed this country, destroyed it from a national security standpoint to a humanitarian standpoint, and on it goes. So if this is what you want to vote for, if this is what you want to have happen to the United States, then that's it. But I'll tell you, if the new administration comes in, gone, gone have to be the days where we have kids here on student visas protesting at liberal
Oh my
universities like
God.
Columbia, swearing allegiance to Hamas without being arrested and deported immediately.
It is crazy.
That's over.
So when I also the other end game question is, why would the Democrats push it this far? Obviously, Obama's involved in this. He's an advisor. John Kerry is, the Podestas, Valerie Jarrett, Hillary Clinton. They're all at the White House on a regular basis. What is their game at the end? How do they benefit? Is it just they get wealthier and more control?
No, it's all about power.
Okay.
It's maintaining power for as long as they can.
So no matter how chaotic we get as a country, there'll always be that group at the top like Mayorkas or Chuck Schumer. They're not going to be touched by it.
That's right. That's right. That's right. They'll never feel what the Americans are feeling and dealing with on a regular day in and day out basis as they bounce around with their security details in their bubble, right? I mean, they can create this mess, but they don't have to live this mess. And that's the difference. And at the end of the day, the Democrat Party maintains control by manipulating the voter population. It's exactly what they're doing. I mean, nobody has been able to tell me any different.
Oh, I agree. And it's that whole crisis solution, that whole game that's been the Sololensky game and the Marxist game.
Yeah. Yeah. We got to get back to the basics. We have to stop being a country of extremes. That doesn't work. We've got to come to the middle and say this is how we make the country work, and this is how we need to be consistent.
Well, it's a pleasure having you on, Charles Marino, author of Terrorist on the Border and in Our Country, and I'd like to have you back on the show, so I hope you will come back on. I want to get an update on the book tour and tell us when the needle's moving, and if there's a big illegal immigration issue, I'd love to have you come on just for your expert opinion.
Well, I'll tell you, it's resonating. Since we launched on May 14th, the book has been a bestseller on Amazon, #1 in law enforcement. So it's resonating. This crisis is, to a certain extent, uniting the country.
That's the only good thing about it. So hopefully we come together. Well, thank you again, sir, and I look forward to having you back on.